There is, of course, real wrongdoing by police. We've covered it. We have said that the police officer should be held to account and they should go to jail for it. It's wrong. But paying victims does nothing to actually deter the bad behavior or punish those responsible. It is quite simply just a payday with your money. Robert Patillo is here, civil rights attorney based in Atlanta, host of a local radio show, People, Passion, and Politics. Robert, it's good to see you. I know you're a lawyer, and the lawyers always get a third, so I don't mean to impugn your profession's integrity in any way. But is this really about justice or money?
It absolutely is about justice, because when you don't have a criminal justice system that has a habit of convicting police officers for misconduct, then the civil justice system is often the victim's only opportunity to change the behavior of these police departments. Look at a city like Memphis, for example, in the Tyree Nichols case. City leaders said that part of the reason they acted so quickly was because of fear of settlements, fear of destruction of property, fear that if they did not act quickly, that you would have a negative reaction from the community.
These are different things, though, right? Because in the Tyree Nichols case, they did act swiftly. You say because of fear of destruction of property. It was fear of riots. And they charged these officers criminally. I'm sort of trying to get to the fairness of this, right? $8.25 million for a traffic stop in which nobody was hurt and lasted an hour. I think there's probably some people who may be willing to take that deal. You compare them to the settlements. Kevin Strickland in Missouri, wrongfully imprisoned for 42 years. $0. Curtis Flowers in Mississippi, tried 6 times, 23 years in jail, $500,000. Christopher Miller in Cleveland, $4 million. Jury convicted him in 2002 of a rape and robbery charges, 40 years in prison, no DNA evidence. He was wrongfully convicted. Ralph Blaine Smith in Ohio, $1.3 million, spent 21 years in prison for a reported home invasion robbery that perhaps never occurred, and he split the money with his attorneys. And these 3 women get $8.25 million for a traffic stop that lasted an hour. How do you allow police to do their job if they're not going to get penalized, which they're not, and all it ends up being is just a shifting of money from the taxpayers to these people who were in handcuffs for an hour?
Well, 2 points. One, I agree with you. I think this is why we need to address the issue of qualified immunity for officers, because often what we see is officers that have a continued history of violating the civil rights of individuals, and they can simply move department to department without paying any actual personal penalty. So I agree with you on that point, but this is something that police unions have fought tooth and nail across the country to prevent the rolling back of qualified immunity against officers. Secondarily, the only way to get departments to actually take seriously this issue of not hiring officers to have records of police abuse, that do not have records of violating civil rights, is through the civil court system.
I have to stop you with the facts. We have no idea whether these officers had any records of bad conduct to begin with, and their own internal investigation cleared them of any wrongdoing. You and I both know you can convince a jury of just about anything and jump and scream and say, hey, there's a civil rights violation, give these people an enormous amount of money. Really, can anybody defend $8.25 million for a traffic stop?
That is what the statute allows for. And I think the people of California have decided that those are the settlements they want to take place under the Bain Act, which is the governing law there. If you look at a city like Chicago, for example, nearly $100 million per year of the city budget goes towards police brutality and police misconduct cases. Indeed, last year, you had 30% of the cases of that budget going just simply to 3 cases. If you don't want to pay these settlements out, train the officers better not to violate people's rights. That's the simple answer to it.
No, it's a good point in terms of if we don't hold the officers responsible at some point, even from disciplinary action, you might think that there'd be a standard by cities. Hey, if we have to pay out on your behalf, you no longer have a job, because you point out there are these repeat offenders as officers go, that all of a sudden you're paying out a substantial amount of money for just a very, very few officers. Don't, though, when you're dealing with $9 million for a traffic stop, doesn't that encourage people to begin to make false accusations, to create situations that put officers in very bad positions if they think to themselves, hey, I saw this woman on TV, she got handcuffed for an hour, and all of a sudden she's now a millionaire?
Well, this is a very fact-specific inquiry. This case is very much an outlier if you look at the history of bayonet civil suits in California. In this case, you had a situation where a woman was driving from Las Vegas to California to take her two daughters to take a math exam at Stanford. And then the police questioned them when they were looking for car burglaries for three men, when this is a woman and her two daughters, would not tell them what they were charged with, would not tell them why they pulled them over, handcuffed them, and the jury decided that they had violated their civil rights and violated the bayonet, as I mentioned earlier. This is not something that happens every single week. And I think that if the officers and the police departments don't want this to happen going forward, and train your officers to better interact with the public and to not violate the rights of individuals as the jury has determined.
Yeah, you definitely didn't seem as though that the officers were exactly shall we say, the best of the best in how they handled things. Left a lot to be desired. Robert, thank you. Good to see you as always. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.